All right.
You live.
We're we're live in a few seconds. Excuse me for looking at my phone. I'm trying to share this with some people. All right. Hello, everyone. Excuse me for my technical difficulties, but this is Talk About It. I am Dwayne Shigg, and this is Talk About It. And we will be talking to some gentlemen about their relationship with their fathers. That's right, relationship with their fathers. And I know we're on a slight delay, so it's gonna look weird because we're on a few seconds delay, so it's looking real weird. But we're gonna make it through this. I'm trying to share this at the same time that I'm on here, and that's probably not the best thing to do. But here we go. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Hey, amazing.
Good, good, good. Talk About It is what we will be doing, and I wanted to lift up fathers. I wanted to lift up fathers. There's an old school song, and Pastor Odin, you might be familiar with this. Terrence, I don't think you are. It's by a group called the Winstons, and it's called Color Him Father. And it's an anthem. And Pastor David, I'm not sure where your age is if you remember that song, but it's an old school song.
I'm with you, man. I remember that one.
Okay. It's called Color Him Father. And so it's an ode to fathers. And so I wanted to come tonight and give this ode to fathers because June is a very special month. It's Father's Day. And then June 5th would have been my father's 89th birthday. And June 5th is also going to be my 62nd birthday. But also, June the 5th is Cousin Terrence's birthday. So we got a lot of great people on. A lot of great people doing some things on June the 5th. And so this month is Father's Day, is a month containing Father's Day. And I wanted to spend some time celebrating and elevating fathers. And I've got some gentlemen with me tonight that are going to be talking about their fathers. Pastor Quentin Oaten, pastor of Tried Stone Baptist Church in Carson, California. How you doing, man?
Doing great, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. And Pastor David Jones, he's one of the associates of Love and Faith Christian Fellowship. How are you, sir?
Doing good tonight. Doing good.
Good. And then the other great man that shares June the 5th, Cousin Terrence Kimball. How you doing, cousin?
I am beautiful, man.
And
loving life.
You're in Arizona. What part?
I am in Gilbert, Arizona. So just outside of Phoenix, about 15 minutes outside of Phoenix.
Okay, good. 15 minutes outside of Phoenix. That's good. And so we're going to be talking about fathers. We're going to go talk about, as I said before, we're celebrating and elevating fathers. Now, let me throw this disclaimer out. We know there's some guys that are not good fathers. We know there's some deadbeat dads, but we're not talking about them tonight. We're talking about the good fathers. We're talking about the daddies that doing it right. We're talking about the faithful fathers. We're talking about giving props to pops that were present. You like that way I just threw that in there? There we
go.
That was the best ad lib I ever wrote. So we're doing that. And let me say this. We understand that there are single mothers holding it down, and we're not negating that. But that's not what we're talking about tonight. And just because you elevate one person doesn't mean you negate somebody else. Can somebody say amen?
Amen.
And so that's what we're doing tonight. We want to lift up fathers. We want to lift up fathers. And let me start this. This conversation is necessary, I believe, because a lot of times fathers don't get credit, don't get due. And I'm not suggesting we get a parade for doing what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be responsible. We're supposed to be there. We're supposed to. I'm not suggesting, because I would tell my son all the time and other people, you don't get a parade for doing what you're supposed to do. But you ought to get some acknowledgement and appreciation. And that's all I'm saying. And so that's why I think this conversation is important, giving accolades, giving recognition to the guys that are doing it right. And so I want to go around. I want to ask you, in your estimation, why is this type of conversation important? If you agree with my thesis that it is important, why do you think it's important? Why do you think it's necessary? And how does it help? Let me start with Terrence Kimball. How are you? And then why do you think this conversation is necessary if you do? And how does it help?
I'm doing great, by the way. But, I think, specifically for me, I'm raising two young boys. Hopefully will become fathers someday. I have no grandchildren yet.
Okay.
But we want to be able to, as we know, it takes a village to raise all of ours. I think it's important for them to be able to see the dialogue from others, not just from my mouth. How it is being a parent. Your kids look at you like you have no clue of what it is that you're saying. So actually getting it from somebody else who's walked that life, who is seen in a positive light, is extremely important, and sharing it with the rest of our up and coming future fathers.
I like that. Pastor Odom, same question. Why is this conversation necessary, and how do you think it helps?
I think it's very necessary because I look at this more from a historical perspective, because fatherhood for African American men is relatively new, because you can't count slavery, because their role and responsibility was diminished.
Okay.
And I have a grandfather that was born in 1863. Grandfather, not great grandfather.
Wow.
So I'm only 2 generations away from slavery.
Right.
So when you look at it in the historical context, it really means that African American men have not been given much of an opportunity to figure it out. So a lot of what we see with the negativity that's portrayed toward African American men, you got to remember, we're modeling here. That's what fatherhood is about. There's no class for fatherhood. There's no class for being a husband. So you have to model what you see and then decide how much of it you want to absorb into your practicum, right? So we're still kind of in the infancy, and nobody seems to acknowledge this, but the man's role in his house was undermined by slavery and then again by Jim Crow.
Okay.
So fathers have not been given, African American fathers in particular, have not been given the respect that they deserve, nor the space to grow into it, because again, we've been thrust into something that was stolen from us for 400 years. So now you're going to take 100 years and say, now you're supposed to catch up. Well, how do you catch up when you've now sabotaged the family unit for Black people?
Right.
So this is something we need to talk about and encourage, because I tell you, you're not going to get this just by osmosis. You're not going to, this is something that must be cultivated. So the environment and the conversation is really, I'm hoping, helping some fathers that are out there to just to take a different look at it.
Right. So if I'm hearing you correct, things like this and growing and showing and helping us be better fathers, that has to be intentional.
Yes.
Okay, I like that. It's
been mostly accidental up until now, but it needs to be intentional, because I'm thinking about my sons and their role, and where I might have helped and where I might have hurt. Both things are true, and we have to just be honest about it and do what we can to mitigate when trouble comes.
I like that. Pastor David, your relationship with your father, you personally don't have any children, but you mentor, people from church and different things of that nature. But as it relates with your relationship with your father, from your perspective, why is this conversation necessary, and how does it help?
Well, one, Pastor Odom started stepping on my answer, so let me.
Great minds think alike.
Look. I didn't mean to mess up the coordination.
basically it's this. Look, fathers, no, Black fathers in particular have been given such a bad rap over the years that when you said, we're going to talk about the good fathers today, I imagine there are people out there that went, well, I guess you guys aren't talking about anything tonight. We need to have these conversations because people only hear about the bad fathers. They don't really, because look, the good fathers are just doing what good fathers do. They're
Right.
just doing what they're expected to do, and nobody's ringing up the bells loud for them. But the bad ones, man, they're screaming loud and for everybody else to hear. So this kind of conversation lets us recognize that, hey, yes, we are four Black men talking. We've all had Black fathers, I assume.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
You know, and we see the good in those men. Not that they're perfect, but we see the good in those men. And so it's good for people to hear that, one, yes, there are good Black fathers out there. And two, I think it's been kind of said, perhaps this could inspire other people to be better fathers.
Right. Right. And that's part of the reason for this conversation, to celebrate and elevate our fathers personally, but to shine light on fatherhood, some practical things, and in an attempt to assist others in their fatherhood. Gentlemen who are new fathers, gentlemen who've been fathers for a while, but as Pastor Odin said, there's no book on this. So right now, as a whole, we just now getting some things right. But also, I like what you said. The negative is shown much more than the positive.
Positive, true. Yeah.
And then, up until recently, and it would always bother me when you see commercials on television and you see commercials about families, you'd see, Jenny and Becky and their father, Tom. But when you saw commercials with us, you saw Leroy and his sister Shaniqua, and then you saw his mama Mabel, but there was no daddy there. And that was, for some people would say, intentional. And I remember hearing the story about Good Times, the TV show Good Times, when it first came out, before they put it out, they wanted it just for Esther Roll to just be a single mother. And she said she wasn't doing it that way. She wasn't going to do it unless there was a husband in the show. So the programming is to just show the fatherless household. Now, there are some great fatherless households. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there are so many households with fathers. I mean, all of you guys grew up with your fathers. I grew up with my father. My father wasn't in my house, but he was always in my life.
Right.
And so, I tell people I wasn't raised by a single mother. I was raised by my mother and my father. Now, my mama was in another room. My daddy was as close as the telephone. And if I messed up, I'll find out how close he really was after my mama called him. So, but I think this is necessary. And I want to ask you, and we're talking about, fathers lifting him up. I want to ask each of you to give me a lesson that you've learned from your father and how it has affected your life. A significant lesson, something you learned by watching, by conversation. I learned how to work by watching my father, because my father took me and my older brother, he took us to work with him. And so we watched work. So we know how to work. Why? Because daddy worked, and that's what men do. They work. Some work with their hands, some work with their mind, but they work. And so I just want to go around. Pastor David, I want to start with you. Give me a lesson that you learned from your father, and how did it impact and affect your life and or your manhood?
Obviously, there are a lot of things, but the thing that always comes to mind is this one little story that I'll say the end of it first, is that you learn how to make the best out of a bad situation. Okay. Quick example. I was 12 years old. And my father liked to fish, so we would normally go to the ocean or whatever, but this one time he wanted to go to Lake Henshaw.
Okay.
So we drove all the way out to Lake Henshaw. To me, it felt like it was forever away, I don't know how far it really is. We got there, and this was during one of the really bad drought times. So the water level was really low in comparison to what it normally is.
Okay.
He'd rented a cabin, we were out there for like 3 days. We caught one fish. One fish. He turned to me one night and said, "You know what? Let's take off. Let's go to Salton Sea."
Oh.
Packed everything up, middle of the night, got to Salton Sea. Might have been midnight by the time we got there. Of course, Salton Sea was still hot. So even though it was midnight, he, 12, I still couldn't bait things properly. So he baits my thing, toss it in there. And before he could even get to his rod, I'm pulling stuff up. Well, get him off, more bait, literally popping in. And before he gets to his rod, I'm pulling it back in.
Wow.
We filled up our cooler in no time. I mean, it must have just been a school of fish is going by. We filled up the cooler really quickly, took a nap in the car, and then just so every situation isn't necessarily as bad as it is. If you make a few adjustments, you can make it better.
Make a few adjustments.
But you have to be willing to think outside the box a little bit. We could have stayed there at Lake Henshaw. It was a comfortable cabin. There was a spot where we could get burgers, but he wanted to fish. So let's go fish. Well, we can't do here. Let's go somewhere else. So look for other solutions to resolve your issues. And go with the flow.
Okay, go with the flow.
Yeah.
And that's something that you've had to utilize in your own life?
Oh God, yes.
Because everything hasn't flown just exactly the way you wanted it.
I mean, there's that cliche. Men make plans and God laughs.
Right.
I mean, look, I didn't plan on being in ministry, but I'm here.
Right.
I had to, at some point in time, change up my plans and go with this other flow, whether I really wanted to or not. I had to go. And I mean, it happens at work, it happens in life, happens in relationships. It's like, hey, I was thinking it was going to go this way, but no, we got to go this way. And it's every little thing. And so you have to be willing to be open to that. You can't be so stuck and this is what I planned. This is what I want to do. I'm not open to anything else over here. I'm just going to do it this way.
Right.
Sometimes you have to be willing to say, you know what? This way isn't working. Let me try this. And the try might be the thing. The try might not work, but you got to be willing to go.
Right. You are joining us, if you just came on, this is Talk About It, and we are talking to fathers. We're talking about fathers. We're talking to sons about their fathers. This is intended to shine some light, as I said, celebrating and elevating. And I want to go next to Pastor Odin, but before we do, I want to tell you how I came about this title, Talk About It. My father-in-law, unique man. Most of the time when you answer the phone, you say, "Hello, Shigg residence, can I help you?" Or "Hello." My father-in-law, when he answered the phone, he said, "Talk about it." That's the way he answered the phone. And so that stuck with me when I was preparing this. But talking about specific issues, right now we're talking about fathers. And so I want to ask Pastor Odin the same question. A lesson that you learned from your father that has stayed with you, and how has it affected you in your life and or your manhood?
Actually, there's two things. I mentioned earlier about, you kind of, some things you learn by observation. One of the things that I learned from my dad, and I think you mentioned that you learned how to work from your dad. Mm-hmm. I was given a different perspective about work because my father worked 2 jobs that nearly took his life. He was working as a school teacher and then working at the post office when he got off work at school. So there were many days I almost never saw him, simply because he was working 2 jobs and his schedule was so tight that he didn't have an opportunity to participate in the things that were going on with us, because his whole life was work. And
Right.
he had an episode where his heart was racing over 200 beats a minute.
Wow.
And they had to do a cardioversion on him, and they almost didn't bring him back. That moment stayed with me. I was 19 years old when that happened with him, but that changed the way I looked at everything, because 2 things came from that. I decided, number one, I was not going to work myself to death.
Right.
And number 2, I was going to make sure that I had time to be involved in whatever my kids were involved with. So it didn't matter how great or small it would be great to them, just like, it was to me and my siblings. We wish that Dad could have been there for
Right.
so many events. And sometimes, your best ability is your availability. And
I like that.
That's the thing that I think as fathers, we have to remember. Our presence means an awful lot to our kids, just
Yes.
our presence, not
Yes, it
so
does.
much words of wisdom, just to know that you are important enough for you to take time being at whatever's going on for them. So that's what I think I learned just out of the whole circumstance of him working so hard to try to provide for his household.
I like that. And so learning the lesson in terms of maybe in reverse, good to learn about working and responsibility, but not too much. Definitely.
Right.
Definitely. That's
Got to
good.
balance it.
Balance it. That's a good word. Terrence, lesson learned
Yes, sir.
that affected you from Uncle Willie.
The interesting thing is, and I see a theme going on here with fathers working. I think that especially being our Black fathers, I don't think you had really a choice but to learn how to work from,
Right.
especially of a certain age, of a certain generation. They wasn't going to allow you to to sit back. But I think the interesting thing is that I have had an entrepreneurial spirit all my life. Basically, from the time that I was 11 or 12 years old, started landscaping company, and that actually happened as a result of my dad. As my dad saying, I remember the funny story. I'm a Cosby kid, right? So that was. That was the show that we all. I remember there was an episode where Theo was asking, Cliff for his allowance. So I said, that's a great idea. I'm gonna go to Big Willie and ask for an allowance. I said, hey, Dad, I think I do enough around here. I should get, my $40 a month or whatever it was, And he said, okay, well, he started doing all this. You start doing all this math, it costs you this much to feed you, it costs you this much to clothe you. By the end of it, he's saying, in the end, you owe me.
Right.
But then what he said was, I tell you what, I'll allow you to use my lawnmower to go and get your neighbors around the neighborhood. And I'll allow you to use all my equipment to cut their grass. And I'll allow you to keep all the money. And that'll be your allowance.
Ooh.
And in actuality, that one little thing that is always stuck with me. There are a lot of other little things too,
Right.
Never paid for anybody to do any kind of work on a car or work on a house. That's what he had me for.
Right.
Had me to hold the ladder or hold the paintbrush or whatever it was. But that one thing is literally what drove me throughout all of my professional career. And coming from a man who, highly educated, was an educator for 40 some years, whatever, was, and in his own admission, was always too afraid to not have a good government job, too afraid to go out on his own, strike out on his own and do his own thing. And for me, I've always been totally opposite from that.
Okay.
20 years that I spent in banking were miserable for me because I wasn't out doing exactly what it was that I knew that I was put here to be, and that was to run my own business. And so that in itself has really stuck with me all my life, was his ability to uh, create that dream for me, basically by his structure. Even though he was afraid
Right.
to do it on his own, he saw the value in creating that structure for me so that I didn't have those same fears. And, I just think that that has been such a big thing. I work with, with almost anybody who asks, but, my kids and my nephews and nieces and everybody.
Right.
Hey, look, you know what? You find the opportunity to get out there and make it on your own. You don't have to wait for somebody to come give you an opportunity. You don't have to wait for somebody to give you to hire you for the good job. If you're being stonewalled from somewhere or another, go create your own space.
Right. I like that. Create your own space. There's the people that know me know I'm an old schooler, and there's an old song by James Brown that says, "I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open the door, I'll get it myself." And that's the spirit that you're talking about, and that's great. I like that. So and that's something that you can learn, as Pastor Owen said, not by osmosis, but by observation.
Right.
Person's work ethic and things of that nature. Talking books, talk about it. We're talking about fathers, and I want to interrupt us with one quick commercial. Talk About It is brought to you by my latest book. It's called Encouragements for Tough Times. We're all going through some difficult times, but this book will help you go through that. There's some practical information in it, and there's a message in here called I Can't Sing, and that focuses on the fact when we get in trouble, we start thinking about what we can't do. And so that message is to help us to flip it. I can't sing, but I can do something. You can't do that job, but you can do another job. Kind of what you just said, Terrence. You can go get it. And so Encouragements for Tough Time is available. Encouragements is my brand. I tell people sometimes you need a breath mint, sometimes you need an encouragement. One's for your mouth and one's for your mind. So if you'd like to get a copy of this book, you can get it at Amazon.com. If you'd like an autographed copy, you can send $13 to the Cash App, Shigg Biz, capital S, lowercase HIGG, capital B, lowercase IZ, and you get an autographed copy. In the memo section, put in TFT as the code, so I'll know which book to send you. All right, business taken care of. I want to go to a different direction right now. Fathers and sons. When we're like 6 years old, we think daddy is the greatest. He knows everything. When we get 16, this old dude don't know nothing. When we get 26, 27, we realize, well, he probably had a good idea about some things. And so, knowing it takes a while for us to get to the point. I think, Terrence, you said it, sometimes we'll hear something from somebody else instead of accepting it from fathers. Right. And I want to ask us to help somebody right now. And the question I'm asking you is, how did you get through, deal with finding out your father was human? He had flaws. If there was a particular flaw that he had, I'm not asking you what it was. I'm asking you, how did you get through it? Because I want to help somebody that they're mad now because their daddy was whatever. And that can stagnate and even interrupt a good relationship or keep you from having one. For example, my father, I lost my father about 17 years ago. My father has never said, I love you to me. He's never said, I'm proud of you to me. And he would praise a lot of other things and other people, but I would never hear him praise me, and that would bother me. Until I found out, now this is how I dealt with it. I got an understanding and an explanation. He never said it to me, but I found out he was saying it to everybody else. He'd tell anybody who would listen about his 4 boys, and they were doing this. They was playing ball. One does this, one does that. And then when I went into ministry, and so I got a better understanding that although he never said it to me, he was proud of me because he was bragging on me anywhere anybody would listen. And one of the things that helped me with this is that my father was born in 1932 in a place called Thomasville, Georgia. And deep South. My father didn't have the greatest education, but with all of that, he raised 4 boys, bought a couple of pieces of property, had his own business at one time. But there were still some things from the South that affected him, if you understand what I'm saying. And because of that, there were certain things that, at that time, guys didn't do. He didn't talk that way. But I didn't understand that. I thought it was personal. But once I got an understanding and an explanation, I was able to handle it better. And I'll tell anybody now that my daddy is the greatest man I've ever met because I've got an understanding. And I was thinking about something, Terrence. I was thinking about something. My father was born in 1932. And you mentioned this earlier, Pastor Oden. 1932 is only 67 years after the end of slavery.
Right. You don't think about it that often, but it's so close and it's connected. And we don't acknowledge that.
And that's the thing that I had to realize. All of that stuff, 67 years after the end of slavery, he's in a place called Thomasville, Georgia.
Right.
So he had people calling him boy. Father, we've seen white and colored water fountains on television, but my father actually experienced that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that had an effect on different things. And so my answer to this question is that I got an understanding. I got an explanation of the why. And then it wasn't personal. And when I understood that he never said it to me, but he was saying it to everybody else. So he did love me. He was proud of me. And so the other things were a question of his upbringing, something that he had no control over. He had no control over being born in 1932 in Thomasville, Georgia. And so that helped me. And so I want to help some other people because people are having, people can have, this can hinder relationships. And so we want to help some people with their relationship, with their father, relationship as a father. And I want to go to you all, but I want to talk about briefly, and I was telling you all this before we went on the air. When I was younger, I was young and stupid. I wasn't, a real good father because I was stupid. And when Marcus was about 27, 28, I wrote him a letter apologizing for all of my stupidity and asking him to forgive me. Because I didn't want him to be with me where I was with my father. You understand what I'm saying? Having issues and not understanding. And so it wasn't an excuse, but an explanation. So we can do some things to bridge that gap. So I'm asking you all, I want to start with Terrence. How did you deal with, overcome, when you realize that, okay, daddy's human, he may have made a mistake or two. And again, I'm just asking you how you got over it. What it was is irrelevant because everybody has something different. But how did you handle it? How did you get through it?
Well, you know what? Unfortunately, I believe my answer is going to be fairly boring. Okay. As all of y'all know, my father. I don't have any stories of needing to get over.
That's great.
Anything from my life experiences with my father. Obviously, now at 48 years old and him just making 82. No one's perfect. Everyone has tripped up at some point somewhere. Right. But I guess the biggest thing that I would say is, I've had the blessing of having a totally supportive father.
Great.
who supported everything that we did. You know, sometimes we wish he was home a little more because he was always working, or, you know, again, never wanted to pay anybody else to do a job that he could do, which meant that he was that he was gone, you know, working at the, you know, his properties here, or, you know, at school, you know, for 12, 13 hours. But, you know, and hey, look, you know, our events when we were kids, you know, he would show up, you know, what, 5 minutes before it was over, just to be in the crowd. So,
But he
you
was
know,
there.
you know, hand up in the air saying, "Hey, I made it."
Right.
You know, but you know, as I guess the that I guess I would say, you know, maybe I would point at that. That was one thing that I made sure, because although it didn't really, as a child, it didn't bother me. When I got to look out there into the crowd and I saw that he was there, and I knew that I had been looking for him the whole time, and I didn't see him, and then I saw him at the end, I knew exactly what had happened.
Right.
You know, that was typical Willie being late, and, you know, having all the other stuff that he was doing, and not getting there until the end. And maybe he even actually missed a performance, or maybe he caught the tail end of it, or whatever the situation was. And that was something that I had to say, hey, you know what? I would like to do it a little differently with my kids. So I was always early. You know, I was always the one that was taking them, because I wanted to make sure that there was not going to be a circumstance where they were performing whatever it is, sports, or, you know, school programs, things like that, whatever it was, when they looked out and they didn't see, you know, this bald head, you know, looking back at them. And so, you know, again, I mean, I think in the end, for me, it wasn't really difficult or anything that I had to really overcome per se.
Right.
It was, you know, understanding at the time. And because we had always had such a close relationship, and we, you know, we talked even as a kid, you know, we always spoke. I understood why it was that he was, you know, that he might be late to an event. Like I said, he never missed one. It wasn't that, you know, he wasn't going to be there, but why he would be like, I understood why. I understood that he was doing these things to make our lives, you know, more comfortable, things like that, you know.
Yeah.
But I did make the conscious effort to say, well, I can do all those things to make their lives more comfortable and still be there on time. And, you know, be an active part of those types of situations. And so hopefully it will bleed into their lives as they move forward.
Right. That's good. Kind of what Pastor Odin was talking about. His father, he learned something from his father by, in a sense of reversing what he was doing.
Right.
In that sense. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And you say reversing, it was just making some tweaks. That was it.
I got you.
That was, you know, as Reverend Jones said, you know, hey, look, you know, it's making some adjustments to what it is that you have, so that you can find that level of enjoyment or whatever it is you're doing. So it's just making some tweaks. It really wasn't having to make, you know, a 180 degree, you know, change of what it was that I experienced, but it was just making just a little bit of tweak. Say, hey, look, you know, I'm doing this just a little differently, because if I got the great benefit that I got out of having such a supportive father, look how much more it could possibly add on to my boys' lives. And I say my boys, my daughter too, but you know, look, she'll be 30 this year, so I'll be, you know, she well, not 30, she'll kill me, 29. So sometimes she gets left out of the communication because I'm still having to, you know, I'm still having to push these boys around where she's totally self-sufficient.
Right. And see, and that's a good testimony to have that you just shared. So that is great. We're gonna go with Pastor Odin and then Jones. Same question. If there is something that, you know, in your father's humanity that you dealt with, how did you overcome it? How did you deal with it, if that was an issue for you?
Well, it's really two connected things. My dad was a World War II veteran.
Okay.
And he was at the Battle of Normandy and in North Africa, and came back with 4 Bronze Stars.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so the only thing about it though is when you've been in that environment and you're a quartermaster in a place where a lot of death, he saw so much death, and there was no treatment for post-traumatic stress.
Oh, yeah.
So my dad had to cope with all of the post-traumatic stress on his own. And
Wow.
many times when he was silent and wasn't talking, I believe that that's what was happening. And, you know, there was one particular time where he basically, because of doctors not watching prescriptions that they were giving him, he had a bad chemistry reaction to some medicines, and he had to go into the hospital for a period of time for a psychological break because the medications triggered it. But
Okay.
all of the things that happened to him during the war came back then.
Wow.
So I had to watch my father go through reacting some things that he went through when he was in the Battle of Normandy.
Okay. Wow.
And that's not an easy thing to kind of, you know, get over when you see your dad is in another reality.
Right.
So
Right.
that was a hard thing for us. And I was the oldest at home at the time, so it was more of an issue for me
Okay.
to have to deal with than my other siblings, because
Right.
I was the one that had to take him to appointments and to drive my mother there when he was in the hospital. It was tough, but at the same time, I cannot blame him. I don't know who I
Right.
would be. I don't know who I would be if I had to go through that kind of nonsense. And
Right.
and you know, and then to add pour salt on the wound, my dad came back from World War II, and my grandfather's so proud of him and takes him to a judge in Alabama to ask for permission to vote. And you can imagine
Oh,
how that went
yeah.
in
After he just
Alabama.
finished fighting for the country, can he
Just
vote
finished
for the
fighting for
country?
the country. When he comes back, goes before a white judge in Alabama, and the
Right.
judge told him, "You was a nigger when you left here, and you still a nigger. And
Wow.
no, you don't have the right to vote." So for
Oh,
all of these who are, you know, letting voting not be a big enough deal, you need to know people risk their lives
right.
so that you would have the opportunity to vote. My father being one of them, and it was denied him as somebody who could have been dead. You could
Yeah.
die for this country, but you couldn't vote in it.
Right.
So
Right.
it's, you know, I can't blame him for his humanity. And I have great sympathy for what he went through.
Oh, definitely.
Feel bad about it, wish that I could have done more, but all of that has impacted who I am as a father.
I like that. I like that.
And I think that's really what fathers need to know, one way or the other. Who you are, how you handle things is leaving a permanent mark on your family. And you might not know that it's happening when it's happening.
You might not know that it's happening when it's happening. I like that, but it is happening.
Oh, absolutely it is.
Yeah. And so some things we can't do anything about, but there are other things that can be intentional, as Terrence was talking about when he was talking about Uncle Willie, making sure he got there. Okay, I know I can't get there the whole time, but I'm going to make sure that I get there intentionally. You know, you're going to see my face there.
Right.
And so the intentionality of that, and that's the thing that I appreciate about what the two of you just said, the intentionality of it. Okay, I'm not, you know, I'm not Cliff Huxtable. I'm not, you know, the Banks, Carlton's father. I may be James Evans, but I'm still going to be there, you know. So, and that's the thing that is important for guys to know. And I think both of you talked about understanding some things are not their fault. And so that's important for guys to understand when, okay, I'm blaming my daddy that he wasn't there, but it's not like he was hanging out at the park. He was working. Or
Exactly.
my daddy wasn't all together upstairs. It wasn't because he was drunk. It's because he had to deal with war and then come back and have war against him.
Mhm.
And so an understanding of those things can make it different. And I want to say this, and I'm going to Pastor David. And this is, and I want it to not be seen as whining, because I can't stand whiny men. but being a good stand-up Black man father is not always an easy thing to do, because sometimes people make it hard for you to be that.
Right.
You know, and it's not going to stop you from being that, but because that's what you are. But some people intentionally throw, monkey wrench into things, and then the programming makes it look like, oh, all of y'all just hanging out, all of y'all just, when that's so far from the truth. Okay, let me come back off my political soapbox. Pastor David, same question.
Sitting there trying to decide how to best say this. So growing up, I would say, as great as my father was, I was closer to my mother.
Okay.
Spent far more time with her, whatever. And so I was underneath my mother, probably at times when I didn't need to be underneath my mother.
Mm-hmm.
So I never got to, I always knew my father was human because I heard how he was human from my mother. I heard about his mistakes and this and that.
Right.
And there were several things that she either told me directly or allowed me to hear that maybe I shouldn't have. I don't know. And at the time, I guess I didn't let them bother me. But for some reason, after she passed, in my 30s, something began to happen where some of the things that she told me started to really bother me. I mean, just for some reason, they just like, man, why am I getting angry about this now? I mean, I wasn't even born when some of this stuff happened, so like, why is it bothering me? And it was kind of funny because during this time, for some strange reason, I began to unconsciously push my father to the side and begin to replace the father role with my pastor. I was beginning to make my pastor my father.
Okay.
And I think Pastor Cruz somehow saw that and he pointed out to me. And it really kind of made me recognize some things and really kind of deal with some things to where I finally just had to sit down and have a chat with my father about history,
Right.
family history, basically.
Okay.
And it was not an easy conversation by any means. It was just the two of us alone, it lasted a while. But I think part of the thing was for me to voice what was bothering me.
Okay.
To not continue to keep it all in.
Right.
And I really think more so what he said back to me, it was releasing all that stuff.
Oh.
That began to calm me and relax me.
Okay.
Not having all that stuff just festering inside of me.
Right.
As, men tend to do, just keep it all in,
Right.
But because it got out and we talked, I know I felt much lighter after that and for the years that remained. Okay. So that's how we dealt with it in a serious conversation.
Good.
And I was in my 30s, so we're both adults. We're both adults at this point in time. It's not like, we're your kids. Well, you're always the kid, but still. It was still looking at it from a whole different perspective. And like I said, being able to talk intelligently about it, and not just talk intelligently about it, but emotionally intelligent about it. This is how I felt. This is how this made me, blah, 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 and this is how it made me look at you, kind of thing. And just have those kind of conversations, and like I said, it wasn't easy, but we did it.
And that's interesting because a lot of times, fathers and sons don't have those open conversations. Is, boy, go do what I tell you, or I'm your daddy, or whatever the case may be.
I'm not saying we had any other conversations like that, but we had that.
It was to be avoided from that point forward, right?
Right. You want to make that clear. But that conversation that you just talked about oftentimes can be rare. Now, we know the other ones exist, but sometimes, just a conversation about, this is how I'm feeling now, depending on the dynamics of your father, some fathers you can't have that conversation with, but it seems to be a blessing that you were able to have that. And as you said, all of that stuff not festering in. And so sometimes you have to let that go. Now, there are guys watching that, they may not be able to have that conversation with their father, but maybe they need to get an understanding of the whys.
Mhm.
They may need to get an understanding of it wasn't his fault. He went over here and he got messed up in the head, or different things of that nature. So there is, and my father used to tell me all the time, there ain't nothing like an understanding. And that was his paraphrase of, I think it's Psalms 130. I'm not gonna say it because I might mess it up, but the psalm that says, without wisdom is the principal thing, but get wisdom. And so that was his interpretation, or his Shiggized version of that verse, getting an understanding, because that's always good. And so I'm hoping that these truths are helping somebody. Want to go with one last question, because I don't want to hold you guys too long, but I want to ask each of you to name something that you admire or respect about your father and why. I'm going to start with Pastor David, then Pastor Odin. We're going to close it out with Terrence. Name something that you admire and or respect about your father and why, because I want us to end, as this conversation is truly intended to be, celebrate and elevate our fathers, because they poured so much into us. There's a book that I've been writing forever, and my wife just called me on the carpet on the other day about it. A book called Some Things My Father Showed Me. And so we see our fathers, we learn, some of us learned, fathers sit down and say, come here, boy, let me tell you about this story. Or in my experience, is not doing that, but just watching him. And that's how he showed me or taught me, And so I wanted to help fathers, help sons. That's why we're doing this. And then next week, we're going to be talking about daughters and their daddies, coming from that perspective. But name something that you admire and or respect about your father and why. So this is going to be our closeout question. Pastor Odin, Pastor Jones, and then Terrence.
Right. So you want me to go first?
Yes.
Okay. The thing that I admire most about my dad was how much he loved his family.
Wow.
He really, and I bless God for the awareness of that, because when my dad got ill from working himself down, it forced him to take some time with us.
Okay.
And I really got a chance to experience how much he loved his family, even when things didn't, necessarily go the way he wanted them to go. His love for the family was demonstrated, and I had a chance to see it, and that explained why he worked himself down the way he did. So it kind of put continuity to everything else that was going on. It was because he loved us so much, and he was concerned that he wasn't able to give us the kind of life that he wanted to give us, because again, the way things have been pitted against African-American men in terms of being able to succeed. My dad had a master's degree, and he was teaching at a junior high school level.
Wow.
He should have been teaching at a university somewhere, but because it was difficult for Black men to get the kind of positions that should have been offered to them, he didn't have that opportunity. And so that meant that he took on the second job to try to make up for where resources were limited. It just made me know that he was willing to put his life on the line for his family.
Wow.
And really, as a father, that's the goal. You
Right.
put your life on the line for your family, and
Right.
you do what you need to do in order to provide the best opportunity for your kids. You might not even know how to say it, but you demonstrate it in your actions.
Right.
And ultimately, those actions are what count.
And I like what you just said. When I'm doing like teaching like marriage seminars and stuff like that, I'm talking about the difference between men and women. And you just said this. Men will oftentimes show I love you before they say I love you.
No question. No question. We are far more comfortable with the show than the say.
Exactly. It's like the wife said, "Baby, do you love me?" "What do you mean, do I love you? I fixed the screen door. I put the new handle on. I killed the spider." "What you talking about, woman?" Of course I love you.
No, you remind me of something. I did not hear my father tell me that he loved me until I was a teenager.
Really?
Right? And I confronted him because I saw more affection in my wife's household than I saw in mine.
Okay.
I came home one day and grabbed him and hugged him and gave him a kiss on the cheek. And I said, "You're going to have to get used to this. This is going to happen because you're going to know how I feel about you
Right.
for the rest of your days here." And it changed the climate because he didn't know the demonstration of that was something, it came from a different time.
Right. Exactly.
It wasn't easily conveyed coming from where he came from.
Right. One of the things that I vividly remember about your father, every time I saw him, he was smiling.
Yes.
Yo,
absolutely.
Every time I saw, he was always smiling, and so I like what you said. You admire the fact that he loved his family, and his way of showing it was to work.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. And so what that says to me is sometimes our fathers show us things before they say things, and so we have to, look at those things. There are things respectable about them, and
Right.
maybe we're just looking in the wrong direction.
We're looking for it to be something different. We're looking for it to be like mama, but his job is not to be mama.
Exactly. He may not
That's
hug
not
you.
his job.
He may not hug you. He may smack you on the butt and say, "Okay, boy, get," because David, I want you to go, but quick story, and say to my wife, "Cheryl, don't put nothing in the comments after I say this." I was teaching my son how to catch. You were talking about how, things are different. I was teaching my son how to catch, and I was throwing him the ball, and he would, flinch every time I throw the ball. And I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I'm scared," and so I told him, I did two things. I said, "Well, if you catch it, you're in control and you won't have to get scared of getting hit with the ball." But he was scared of getting hit with the ball. And everybody here, each one of you guys and every man listening or watching this know what I had to do. I hit him with the football.
That's right.
And he didn't die.
Right. He survived it.
Huh?
He survived it.
He survived it. His mama almost died. Came out there. Back in the house. I'm trying to raise a man here. You talking about, but we do things differently.
Yeah.
Pastor David, something that don't put nothing in the comment section. And see, if you guys could hear, see, I'm in my office at the house, and I got a hallway, another hallway, and a room back to where her office is. I can hear her trying to say something.
You trying to say something, you can hear it.
Yeah. I got two hallways and another room and three closed doors between where she is. And all of y'all know my wife.
Well, just on that note, real quick, if you hadn't beamed him with the ball, I would have some questions.
Yeah. And again, all of you guys and every man watching this know that wasn't about catching no football.
Right.
It's about something way bigger. Pastor David,
so
I respect about your father and why.
Okay. So you were at my father's homegoing. So you kind of know my father in a lot of ways was this larger than life character.
Yes.
On many levels. He was also a provider, in his words, champagne dreams with a beer wallet. He would go into debt if it meant providing for his family. He did all those things, life of the party, the whole But the thing that I often remember the most about him, and for a guy born in 1928, this is unusual.
Mm.
He would cry. He would allow people to see him cry. When he
Men
would
don't
get,
cry.
when he would get, he'd and look, I am becoming my father. Um, he would get, like, if he got angry as he spoke, he would cry. Um, he would cry at other little things or whatever. I mean, I'm not like big boo-hooing kind of thing, but you know, like cracking voice, the tears, and all that. And he wasn't ashamed of it,
Huh.
you know. So here's this man who's, you know, on top of roofs doing this and that with big hammers and this and that, but he was willing to cry and not and let you see him cry,
Right.
you know. And so I think consciously or subconsciously, that always sat with me. That look, it is. Oh, now look, and look, I have always been one of those emotional people like this. As I have gotten older, and I believe closer to God, I've done more of this as time has gone on.
Mm-hmm.
But that sticks with me. It's like, look, it's okay to show all of your emotions, not just the good ones. You know,
Okay.
the happy ones. You can show a range of emotion.
Right.
And that was one of his. He would let you see him cry. And I don't recall, other than church moments, men crying.
Right.
You know? But my father was one of those people. So that is stuck with me.
And didn't lessen his manhood because at the homegoing, I'm listening to all these people saying, you know, these things about Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, you know, you guys lived on what's that street? Broadacres?
Broadacres, yeah.
And he was like the community. I mean, everybody knew who he was.
Our house was the party house.
Okay.
It was the party house. It was the oh God, it was the pub. You know, for the men after work.
Right.
You know, come by and sit at the bar for a while, whatever. You know,
Okay.
it was the rite of passage for the guys growing up to go get a drink at the bar. You know,
Right.
all those things, man. But there was that other side of him as well.
Right. Oh, that's great. That's great. Terrence, what is it that you admire, respect? You know, give me one thing admire, respect about Uncle Willie and why.
Yeah, well, you know, and of course, when you're talking to people who obviously were raised by great men, you're gonna have some things that overlap, right?
Right.
You know that at you know, Pastor David, that was the one, the two things, but one of the first things that I wrote down was that, you know, Mr. Willie Kimball, all 6'3", you know, manly man of him.
Man. Big man.
You know, out of Southwest Arkansas, pick cotton, you know. That man was, and still to this day, never afraid to show emotion.
Really?
You know, you know, y'all look, y'all know who I am. Y'all know who I was when I was that little dude running around there in Calvary.
Right.
Always into something. But you know, I remember I was, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 years old, something like that. And yeah, and I'm gonna be a snitch here. I'm gonna tell on my big sister. She I always tell her it was her idea. She made me steal a candy bar out of Clark's drugstore.
Uh-huh.
And we get home, my mama sees the candy bars. Where you get those candy bars from? And you know, of course, from that point it's going down. And then, you know, my mama, she didn't wait for my daddy to get home. We got it both times, right? We got it from her after she took us up to Clark's. Had to, you know, hand it back over to the manager of the store. Took us to the Southwest precinct. Had him take us back into the jail cell.
Wow.
That's the whole
And then
line
had
right there.
and look, and then had to come home and wait for Willie to get home.
Okay.
And you know, my dad wasn't a big spanker. You know, maybe 5 times in my life did he ever. You know, a little swat here and there, but I ever get the belt probably only about 5 times in my life.
Okay.
And that night, you know, it was, I believe that it was mandatory. He had to do that. He had to teach us what that meant. And, you know, and then after that happens, he's in there just boo-hooing.
What?
Boo-hooing that he had to and I think it was a combination of things in that situation. Yes, he didn't want to put his hands on his kids. He didn't want to put, you know, belt to butt, that type of thing, you know.
Right.
But he was so hurt that you know, we had so much and that we would, you know, that we would do something like that.
Right.
Just totally shook him to his core. But he didn't hide it. He didn't hide that. He didn't hide that from us. He let us see how hurt he was, and it truly has. And you know, now, you know, of course, now, you know, he cry over everything. You know, I call him, you know, and we getting off the phone. I can hear his voice shaking. I miss y'all. You know, whenever he's here or whenever he's, you know, yeah, you know.
I don't know. I'm gonna interrupt you. I don't know how he miss y'all when either you come in here every other week or he and Aunt Abby going to Arizona. How he miss you? Y'all always on the freeway.
Hey man, you know him, man. Always on the road for whatever reason at any time. Doesn't matter. Drop of a hat. I need a babysitter. I'll be there in 6 hours.
Right.
You know.
Your sister Anita said in the comments, she just wanted everybody to know it wasn't your oldest sister.
No, not my oldest sister. No.
She's terrifying because
you absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct, my sister. So, not my oldest sister.
Yeah, she had to make sure. She wrote in the comment section so everybody know that it wasn't.
Oh, but you know, the other thing was his willingness to listen. You know, you mentioned earlier, you know, we've all got that because I said so, boy. And we've all said that, right? You know,
right.
Why? Because I said so, and I don't want to talk about it no more. And, you know, that's enough. But, you know, with my dad, and I'm sure it was probably because of, you know, his educational his background in education and having to deal with, you know, as a principal for all those years, having to deal with these kids coming in and understanding that you can't wield the heavy hand all the time. You're not going to get the response that out of every child that way. You know, every child doesn't respond to fear the same way. They respond to positive reinforcement the same way. They, you know, but his willingness to listen to what it was that we had to say, and then also to adjust the way that he was going to deal with that situation. You know, and he talks to me all the time now, giving me advice as, you know, the father that I am, you know, for these last, you know, almost 30 years. Right. And my kids are all 7 years apart, right? So they all grew up in the same household, but they grew up in different times, right? So, you know, the 14-year-old, the 14-year-old girl was not relating with the 7-year-old boy, and the 7-year-old boy didn't want nothing to do with the 1-year-old boy. Right. You know, and so you couldn't raise them to say, I couldn't do the exact same thing that, you know, with Tyler that I did with Aaliyah and with Aaliyah that I did with Tyler, right? Because times changed over that 7-year period. And he would always say to me, hey, look, you know, sometimes you are going to have to listen to what these kids are saying and make adjustments to how you deal with each individual situation with each individual kid. Because look, they're not cookie cutters. They're not the exact same, you know, person that you're dealing with. And I just really, I do appreciate the fact that, you know, I both of my parents, but we're talking about fathers right now. So, but how willing he was to listen, to hear us out. And I sometimes, after listening, the answer was, okay, cool. Now go do what I told you to do. and the way I told you to do it.
Right.
At the time I told you to have it done, you know. But that was something that was those two things. I mean, I'm a crybaby. I'll admit it. I don't have any problem crying. Look, tears of joy and disappointment and frustration. I don't let them miss it, because I remember how it affected me when I could see my father openly willing to show his emotion, and how it made me feel. It made me feel like he really truly loved me.
Okay.
Because he was so willing to share that part, and so I figured, hey, look, if it works so well with me, then how could I go wrong by doing the same thing with my kids? And I realized it didn't hurt me in any way, shape, or form. Like, it does. They didn't respect me any less.
Right.
You know what I mean? Look, I still, when I tell them to do something, most of the times they go do it. They don't look at me and say, "Oh, look at that cry baby, push over. I ain't gonna do." That's not the case. And so that's, again, like I said, those couple things are probably the most. There's so many.
Can I make a comment? I love this conversation, because that is breaking the paradigm. Because men are supposed to be strong by definition, but what we respect, and because I had the same feeling about my dad, he was the same way. But what we respect and were moved by most was their tears, not just their commandments. And I think that's a powerful declaration for fathers to carry, is don't be so plastic that your children don't know you're real.
Right. I love that. The being vulnerable, but still being daddy.
Exactly.
I'm vulnerable right now, but as Terrence said, okay, I wipe my face. You saw me cry. Now go do what I told you to do.
Yeah. There you go. And nothing changed.
No, and nothing changed. And he's still the same size man that he was before he started crying. Yeah. And the thing that is interesting, and you alluded to it, Pastor Quentin, and Terrence and David said it, that particular thing caused respect and admiration, not any less respect, because here he is, he's willing to let me know that he's vulnerable and he's still powerful.
Right.
And I think those are things that we can let our children see. Fathers need to know that you can be vulnerable and still be daddy. You can be vulnerable.
Lose your title.
Absolutely.
And don't lose any respect or any, for lack of a better term, power or authority that, if you had it before you crying, it didn't come out with the tears.
Right.
No, didn't lose it.
Yeah. I've always said that, I think one of the greatest keys to parenting is that your children should have a healthy amount of fear of you, right? Mm-hmm. But I always explain what I mean by that. I don't mean the fear of cowering in the corner.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's the fear of disappointment.
Ooh.
And I think that is more powerful than anything else that you can do, that you can have, is because if your children fear disappointing you, they will strive to work towards making you happy and gaining your approval and support. And now it's our responsibility as parents that we are providing them with the right direction, so that fear it doesn't go in the wrong direction, right? Because it can go positive or it can go negative. They can do some things looking for your approval, because, hey, look, you're just a bad person. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, I think that's the kind of one of the things that I have really always operated as a parent. I wanted to make sure that my children had a healthy amount of fear of disappointment so that they didn't have to have fear of me, of waiting till your daddy gets home because he got the belt or, or punishment or that type of thing. You know what I mean?
Good. That's good.
Amen.
That's powerful. Gentlemen, I want to say thank you. I'm going to let you go. I want to say thank you for this time, this conversation, because I truly believe it's helpful. I'm looking at the comment, Sister Bowie said, hey, y'all, I'm enjoying. And my uncle said, great group of guests. Those are just some of the comments that I see. And so I'm really believing that this conversation has and will help some people. People may be watching it on the replay on Facebook and then on YouTube when it's posted. And so I really want to appreciate you all taking out the time and being transparent, because again, I really believe it's going to help somebody see what daddiness is about. It's not just the heavy hand, as Terrence said, wait till your daddy get home or those things, but daddies are human. They cry, they mess up, they, do different things. But the daddies we talking about, you can't see your daddy cry if he's not there.
That's just true.
All right.
He's there. And so that's the big thing. And then, being there, sometimes not understanding why he's not there is not because he don't love you, it's because he does love you. And this is the only way he knows how to show it, is to work all the time. Now, he don't necessarily need to do that, but from his perspective, and Pastor Odin, you said it, put it in context.
Yeah.
He's working 2 jobs to show that he loves you. Now, if there was another way, another time, he could show it differently. But at that time, that's the only way he knew how to do it.
Right.
And so that's the part we've got to respect and look at it from that perspective. And so I think I'm hoping that this conversation will help some gentlemen, help some fathers, and help some sons, And before we go, I wanted to give each of you an opportunity to plug something. I know Pastor David, you wanted to plug Club Judah is back, and then I'm going to go with Pastor Odin and then Terrence, his business. So wanted to do that right before we close out. Pastor David.
Yeah, just real quick. Many people know we used to run a gospel rap club out of our church called Club Judah. Well, now there is Club Judah Returns. It's all virtual. It happens on the 2nd and 4th Saturdays of each month. It is broadcast live on both Facebook and YouTube. Just look up Club Judah Returns. It's right now we're having past artists from Club Judah come in, talk about how they got saved, what got them into gospel hip hop, what have they been doing since the last time they were there, changes in their lives, things that they may or may regret, may not regret, whatever it is. And it's really become it's really become kind of an interview show with some music kind of popped in there as well. And you really get, like I said, you get to see different aspects of people that you wouldn't normally see just from them being on stage. There's a couple other segments as well. There's a fashion segment, and then there is a community outreach section as well. But that initial interview is the big piece of it.
How do we find it?
So you can look it up on Facebook, Club Judah Returns, and that returns is with a Z. Look it up on Facebook or YouTube, and you can find it there.
So you guys had a gospel rap club in your sanctuary.
Yes, we did. With we take out the regular chairs, bring in tables with tablecloths on top of them a lot of times, and
they rap it in the church.
Gospel rapping in the church, yes.
Gospel rapping in the church? That ain't biblical.
Show me where it's not.
How come it's not?
Yeah, show me where it's not.
How come it's not? What Bible you read?
Right, obviously the wrong one. Now, these 3 gentlemen know me, and they know I'm kidding. So I want everybody else to know.
Well, you put everybody else, yeah.
Yeah, I know everybody else, you know that I'm joking because I was in the audience at Club Judah oftentimes. So definitely. Pastor Odin, you
Uh,
want to talk about your music project, the church?
Well, yeah, we have a couple of songs that are new releases. Heaven, which we mentioned before on one of your previous podcasts, and Friend was just released on this last Easter,
Hmm.
and written by my daughter Ashley, and she did all the vocals on it as well. Available on iTunes, Google Play. You can see it on YouTube. You can see it. It's on all the streaming platforms, including Pandora. So it's out there. Beautifully written song. We love how the Lord is blessing that. But I'm going to throw something in that I wasn't planning to mention because the Lord just reminded me. I'm almost done with my book.
All right.
The book is entitled The Secret Place of the Most High.
Okay.
It documents some 20 miracles that the Lord has allowed me to witness and participate in. People no longer believe that God is real. People believe that God is just about theological arguments. Sorry,
Right.
that's not true. It's about faith. And when you really believe God and you operate where grace is supposed to operate, I found out here recently that grace is all over the Bible. God's method of grace, God's
Right.
approach to grace, and included in grace is miracles. And I have seen more of them than are. I can't even tell you how many it's been.
Right.
But just the Lord let there be a monument to one of the big ones here with the building that we're in.
That's what I was going to ask you. Were you including that in the book, how that building came together with, the gym and the recording studio and all that? So you're including that in there?
That'll be the last chapter of the
All
book.
right. Now that's going to blow you away, people. When
But
you get that.
I'm telling you, people need to know that God is real,
Exactly.
and the more real you know He is, the more He's willing to show you.
That's
But
for sure.
God does not reward anybody's unbelief. I don't care what office you hold. I don't care how long you've been going to church. It's not about how smart you are. It's about how much you trust Him and believe Him.
There you
So
go.
that'll be coming out hopefully within the next couple of months. But I'm
Okay.
thanking God that I'm just about done. But He added some chapters on me the last time I sat down and start
Looking
working
forward
on
to
it.
it, man. That's exciting.
Yeah,
That's exciting.
looking
Derek,
forward to that as well.
tell us about Kimball Financial.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I am a financial advisor. I have been a financial advisor now for actually April, May, 20 years. I've been in banking for over 25.
Okay.
And in 2015, I formed my own firm, Kimball Financial Services.
Wow.
After being in the being in the brokerages for many years, I decided that it was time for me to go back to my roots of being an entrepreneurial, spirit. And so, I really focus right now, we focus on estate planning, wealth transfer. It's something that, for most of my career, I was there in the Crenshaw district, right there on worked for Washington Mutual Financial Services and Chase Financial Services and U.S. Bank Corp Investments. All of those were right there in the Crenshaw district until I moved from there. Well, not really until I moved. I've still held office there and still have clients there.
Okay.
But it was something that I was really near and dear to my heart, because being there and seeing the we as Black folks, we don't have the story of generational wealth. There are a few, and yes, there are stories, and I know many, but that is something we're very far behind from that aspect. And so being able to transfer wealth, to our to the generations underneath is something that is very important to me. And so that's really what we focused on, connection with attorneys for trust services, planning for, that transition of those assets, so that they don't just get squandered, or they don't just go poof into, the air, because oftentimes that's exactly what happens. They,
Wow.
get split up between the family, and no one ever really sees the true power that, that family member had, that could, continue on to, to other generations. And then, I guess coming soon, we'll be offering mortgage services. I've been, like I said, I've been in banking for so many years, and I decided to add that in the process of adding, real estate services,
Right.
over to my repertoire. I just figure, help as many people as possible and keep on growing, and that's the goal. We do have I do have a Facebook page, Kimball Financial Services. You can do a search for it, and it'll show up there. You contact me through there or through my personal Facebook account, or I can be emailed. My email address is it's terrence.delanok@gmail.com. So Terrence, TERRENCE.DELANOK@gmail.com. And hey, look, you can call me 480-584-7476. My phone number has been public forever. So, and it's on my Facebook profile. So I share it with everybody. So I'm not trying to miss a single phone call.
I appreciate that. Gentlemen, great things. And everyone watching, go and support these different aspects, different things that are going on. You can find these gentlemen, all the different places where they told you. And I want to say thank you once again. I've said it before, but I'm going to be repetitive, but not redundant. My grandfather, Mr. Ben Shigg, he would often say that people don't have to be nice. People don't have to do anything. And when they are, you ought to say thank you. So I'm saying once again, thank you to all of you for taking out the time for my new show, Talk About It. And this month we're talking about fathers. Next week we'll be talking about talking to daughters about their daddies. So that's going to be here next week. And gentlemen, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. And I'm trusting and hoping that there were some fathers and some sons that were helped by what we talked about on tonight. And you can watch it on the replay if you didn't see the whole thing. You can also get it on YouTube. And one last pitch. This is my latest book, Encouragements for Tough Times. You can get your copy, Amazon.com, or you can get an autographed copy, $13 to the Cash App Shigg Biz, capital S, lowercase HIGG, capital B, lowercase IZ, and put in the comment section TFT so I know which book to send you. And we greatly appreciate that. Gentlemen, thank you so much. You all be blessed and have a great Sunday. And Cousin Terrence, happy birthday to both of us on June.
Hey, man, absolutely. To you too, guys.
Happy birthday, guys.
Thank you.
You all be blessed. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right. Y'all have a great one.
All right, you too.